evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET Now's one-stop platform for the micro, small and medium enterprise sector. On this series, we celebrate and salute your entrepreneurial spirit. And tonight, we bring you another exciting conversation on MSME Dialogues. On the special occasion of International Women's Day, tonight I'm joined by 4 spirited women entrepreneurs whose resilience and passion have indeed made them fine business women. Over the next half hour, we'll be talking about the edge that women-led businesses have, the ecosystem that is needed to promote women entrepreneurs, and lots more. So let's welcome in our Delhi studios, Sabina Chopra, co-founder of Yatra.com, Anisha Singh, co-founder of MyDala, and Saidi Chahal, founder at Shiros.in. And joining us from Mumbai is Ameera Shah, CEO of Metropolis Healthcare. Welcome to the show, ladies, and a very happy Women's Day to all of you.
Thank you.
So it's a pleasure to have you all with me here today. So Sabina, perhaps I'd like to open the discussion with you. You're someone who's been working for over 25 years now. You've been in the entrepreneurship space for the last decade. And even though the number of women entrepreneurs is constantly rising, the number of tech-driven companies being led by women is also rising, does the proverbial glass ceiling still exist today?
Okay, to start wishing everybody a happy Women's Day. To answer your question, I personally have never believed in it. But to deny that it doesn't exist or it didn't exist would be wrong. So there has been gender bias. There has been career blocks for growth. There have been career blocks for leadership positions. So yes, the glass ceiling did exist, but I think women are breaking it out into it. And I think to keep on believing will only undermine our self-confidence. I mean, it won't let us go up further. So yes, I think women are breaking out into it and have broken the glass ceiling, if I say today.
So Anisha, you're someone who's worked both in the US as well as in India for a long time. Would you say the gender gap is any different in more developed nations?
I think the gender gap does exist, all right? And the glass ceiling that we talk about, there's a reason that has been coined because it does exist. And yes, has it changed and slowly notched up? Absolutely, but it's there. Is it less so? Are the degrees varying? Of course. I mean, in India, we're seeing more about women entrepreneurship now. In the US, this change took about, I worked for the Clinton administration, helping women entrepreneurs raise funding in 2001. So, I mean, you can see the difference. We're in 2016 now. So there is clearly a shift, but there is a gap on this. But I think more than that, it's also the mindset. I see women doubting themselves a lot more, and I talk about this, and it's actually been coined, this phrase, that we women here doubt ourselves a little more than women just overseas. And I think we give ourselves a harder time, just in general, because I guess we think about our parents.
Women give other women a harder time as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, there is a reason that everybody talks, there's a special place for, women who don't help other women in help. But I think you're seeing that change. I think it's also because there's so many, there's such few of us. You see men walking out of even startup competitions, they high-five each other. Women, when we walk out, the first thing we look at each other and it's competition.
Saidi, does gender affect the DNA of a business? And what are some of those inhibitions that women need to get rid of in order to be successful entrepreneurs?
Definitely. I think gender parity should be a given social construct, right? It's almost embarrassing that it's 2016 and we're still talking about gender gaps at the workplace. And of course, they are not in isolation. Gender gaps in the workplace stem from the fact that there are gender gaps at the very basic levels all across the society. And we, however much we may not like that conversation, it stems from there, and we have to zoom out and look at that. And I think what businesses stand to gain as more and more women get into the workforce is not only access to a different and diverse talent pool, but also a very different kind of workplace, family-friendly workplaces, more sensitized workplaces, and of course, diverse thinking, diverse skill sets, diverse temperaments at the table.
Ameera, you're a second-generation entrepreneur in the brick-and-mortar space. You took over your father's company and really transformed it from a sole proprietorship to a multinational. When you took over, was there resistance from within the organization at being led by a woman?
My father, who's a a well-known doctor and a pathologist, sort of was running his pathology lab for 20 odd years, and I came back to India in 2001. And there was a common vision to say, let's build this into sort of a pan-India chain of laboratories. And of course, the international vision and the emerging market vision came much later. Second generation usually is a reflection of a business which is already constructed. And usually people have a hard time stepping into people's shoes because there's already existing rules and processes and protocols and people. In my case, actually, it was a little bit easier because it wasn't a business to start with, and I was actually building it into a business with him, literally shoulder to shoulder. So in a lot of ways together, we faced first generation entrepreneur problems together, right? So it was slightly easier for me. As far as the gender goes, definitely, I mean, there are preconceived notions and stereotypes of the roles a woman should play in life. And I think people and society have a hard time seeing anything beyond. So woman is supposed to be this emotional, nurturing, soft soul. And even if she's all those things, but along with that, she's ambitious and she speaks her mind and she voices her opinion, those are things people haven't normally seen, so they're quite taken aback by it. And because they can't put it in the stereotype, they feel a need to label it something different, right? This can't be really a woman, this is very manly attributes. And I think those are the stereotypes all of us face. For me personally, besides that, there was also the stereotype of age. There are some industries where age is a big benefit. I think media is one of them. Healthcare is not one of them. Unless you have 40 years experience under your belt, you're not considered somebody at all worth talking to in healthcare. So I think there's a dual problem, really.
We have been talking a lot about the challenges and the stereotypes that women face, but Sabina, there are also clear advantages of having women on your team. And what would some of those advantages be? And do you think having women on senior leadership teams really impacts the financial performance of a company?
You see, women have different skill sets. Men have different skill sets. Women have different skill sets. They have a very diverse way of looking at things. They add a diverse angle to everything that they do. So you bring in diversity on the board. So, and finally, what does it boil down to? It boils down to better results. It boils down to better views. It boils down to better companies. The results are much better. So having women on board is a must, I feel. Having women on the leadership roles is a must. And I think it's much better for an organization to have two kinds of people. So having only men who work in a different angle, having a woman who works in a different angle will only add to the results.
Anisha, would you agree with that? That, also a lot of women tend to control the household expenditure, especially in India. So would you say that having women on your team would perhaps give you better customer insights?
I think women, and I don't think it's about that question, right? I don't think because you're a woman, you have a better understanding about customers. I think because women in general tend to be more intuitive, okay, and more attuned and instinctive, that they just have a better understanding or could be more well-rounded. I don't think it's because they control the household expenditure, all right?
Because when you know what you're going to spend on, perhaps you can offer some insights to the company.
No, fair point, but there are some great analytics guys on my team who have cracked it further. Yes, I think it's just, they tend to make connections faster. My Dala relies very heavily on data analytics, and the analysts will make, the observations, the connections, and what essentially could be a good connect usually comes out of some stellar rock stars that, without generalizing, usually tend to be women. But I think it's just more intuitive in nature. It just so happens that they just get the pulse. And whether it's about women, it's about men, it's just about business in general, they get the pulse in terms of what the market would move towards.
Okay, so women get the pulse better. Amira, would you agree with that? And when you were building your company into a multinational, are there some inherent qualities that you possess as a woman that were a clear advantage for you?
My business is all about people. It's a lot about, we've got about 3,700 people in our team. And it's about bringing, people into the organization that you're also able to build an equation and a relationship with, at least, the top 50, 7,500 people. And I think what I was able to really inculcate into the DNA is two things. One is a sense of empathy, because I think that comes very naturally to women, compassion and empathy. And I think being in healthcare, I think that's something which is very much necessary. For Metropolis, one of the pillars of the value and philosophy that we stand for is being the reassuring hand that our customers need when they're in a place of anxiety, which is when they're sick. And to be able to deal with them at that time with a reassuring hand rather than trying to milk them in a very commercial way of money, I think brought a very unique experience for the customer in a metropolis center. So I think that came very uniquely from actually being a woman. The second part which I mentioned was about relationships. You know, a lot of the people in many situations I've sat across the table or at the age of 20 or 21 with a 65-year-old man whose daughter is older than I am, and saying, look, I want your practice to be part of Metropolis in a way of doing an acquisition. And I had to use my emotional skills and quotient to be able to make them comfortable with me. And the fact that they're sitting with somebody who's younger than their daughter, like their daughter, in a business negotiation. And post the negotiation to be able to actually deal with the idiosyncrasies that come with humanity day in and day out in partnerships. They're like marriages. So I think that's where the emotional understanding depth of being a woman, I think, came to the fore. And I've been able to use that and leverage that in building my business model.
But Sairi, does the VC funding community recognize those skills? Are they all inclusive and gender agnostic when it comes to great business ideas? Or do you think there's...
All right, so at least the numbers don't say so. Globally, women get less than 4% of the entire VC funding, even lesser in India, though relatively the number has increased. But I would definitely like to point out that I think somewhere the unconscious bias we all carry kicks in, you know. So let's hope we don't slot men as men and women as women. Let's just treat them as professionals. Let's take them as people with diverse interests. And let's also allow them to crisscross. It's okay, let's also open the gender conversation to men and maybe, take them off the hook of being primary breadwinners. Because unless we do that, we won't be able to make real way for women to come into the discussion. But to answer your questions, I think we have a long way to go, just in terms of absolute funding that women end up getting or pitching or, slow start, we're getting there. But I think the gender conversation needs to open both ways.
Okay, so on that note, we are going to take a short break right here. On the other side, we'll talk about building an entrepreneurship ecosystem that creates women entrepreneurs and catalyzes their growth. You are watching the Women's Day special on Leaders of Tomorrow MSME Dialogues. Stay with us on ET Now. Welcome back to MSME Dialogues on Leaders of Tomorrow. On International Women's Day, I'm joined by 4 inspiring women entrepreneurs tonight, and we are talking about building an entrepreneurship ecosystem that is conducive to women. Sairi, you help a lot of women get relevant roles in different organizations across the spectrum. A lot of times you're helping women who've taken a break in their careers and are coming back to work. Do you think India Inc. at large needs to be a lot more sensitive towards women and a lot more fair?
So the way I look at it, I think India Inc. needs to be more sensitive to their P&L. Okay, everyone knows it that talent is the most crucial requisite in building a business. If you keep fishing in the same pond, you're not going to produce different results. So I think India Inc. should do it more for themselves and lesser for women, because there is real smart talent out there. There's smarter women. We produce the maximum number of women graduates anywhere in the world, and our women are typically the class toppers. So if you don't want them in your companies, whose loss is that? So I think.
So Sabina, when you had your first child and you tried to get back to work, how difficult was it to crack a job that fit your education qualifications and your experience?
I had been working for 5 years, and when I took an independent decision to, leave my job and look after my small children, and when my younger daughter went back to playgroup, is when the itch started happening and I wanted to get back to work, and I had full encouragement from my family to go back and start work again. And I prepared my CV, I went out in the market, and I couldn't get a job because the hiring managers in those days would ask me a question: you have small children, would you be able to work? Would you not take leave when they were ill? So I had these silly questions coming from the top MNCs coming into me. And I was like quite disappointed, and I would not get a second, there was no question of a skill set that I was being asked. I was being asked more on my children, whether I'll be able to manage them, or when they're sick, what's going to happen. So I went back to where I was working earlier, and I asked them for a job, and I applied there. There was a vacancy there, and they told me, okay, we will, because you've been out for 4.5 years, we don't know whether you have the skill sets, or you'll be troubled by your children, or you'll be taking too many leaves. So we will give you an entry job again. So I had to start all over again, though I left as a manager, and I said, okay. I swallowed my pride and I started working again. So that's why I say women have to prove themselves again and again.
Right.
In spite of having children, yes, my capability is not gone for a 6, but I'm told that I need to prove myself again. So I did that because I had no other option. So I proved myself again, grew back again, and I still see there is some way down the line, yes, life, it has changed the scenario today. But still hiring managers do ask these questions indirectly. So they will ask whether, okay, there's a woman who's been married for 4-5 years, she's on a childbearing age. They will ask those questions, you're planning to have a family. So they're very indirect questions, or do you have support at home before you, come forward, or when they're taking. So they're indirect questions. They're not as direct as they were much earlier, but they're still there. And I feel that needs to go out. And believe me, because of these reasons, women are delaying childbirth. And that is leading to so many infertile cases which is happening today. So it's not something which is recommended. I think we need to recognize the talent, support them when they actually want to take a break, because that doesn't mean their skill sets have gone out.
Given those circumstances, is entrepreneurship a better option, or is it a worse option because you're never able to switch off?
Well, if that's going to get women entrepreneurs, yes, then that's it. If you want to get pregnant, be an entrepreneur. No, entrepreneurship in itself, anybody will attest to, is super hard. Okay, there is no off time. I was back at work 10 days post-pregnancy, which could be marked close to insanity, but that was it. So no, I don't think it's the encouraging thing. There are certain fields that give you flexi hours. If you're a freelancer or you're doing something in the, there are creative fields where you can, tone down your hours. So it just depends what field you belong to. There is a shift in general that we are seeing, though, in terms of people being more accepting. Global statistics are now being published that tell you that it's more beneficial for companies to actually essentially give longer maternity and paternity leaves and then have people join back into the same company, as opposed to going out to look for just following on what Sairi said, then looking for new talent. So at least at Maidala, we do maternity leave, we do paternity leave, and essentially we'd rather have people join us back on. And so far, whoever's gone on maternity leave has come back. Thank God.
That's good to hear. Ameera, in the healthcare space, what was the kind of support that you felt in your early days that was missing and you wished for as a woman entrepreneur?
When I look at some of the tech entrepreneurs today, or even e-com entrepreneurs today, some of them are on the panel today, it's a slightly different world, right, compared to at least 2001. Today at least there's some sort of funding available easily. For me, honestly, when I started building this, and brick and mortar, has of course its other range of challenges, which are, sort of very gritty, sort of, on the ground kind of issues of suddenly, somebody had an accident and you suddenly have a political party coming and breaking your locations. And you've got all these weird situations which happen literally on a day-to-day basis. But, I think what women really need is, as an entrepreneur, is few things. Any entrepreneur, when you get started, what do you need most, right? You need networks, you need contacts, you need relationships who are willing to give you that first shot. Who's going to give you your first, contract? Who's going to give you your money to start your business? And usually for men, it's, their fathers, their uncles, somebody who's willing to believe in them and say, look, I'm taking a punt on you. And that's usually what women never got in the past. I don't know how much different it is today. I think it's better. But at least in 2001, 2002, that wasn't the case. People weren't saying, I'm going to take a punt on you. So what would have been very helpful, I think at that point of time, one is, of course, funding. Second of all is networks. How do you go today to potential customers and differentiate on getting business based on relationship? How do you build that equation when most of the people across the table are men who only choose to see you in one light? The third issue, what about mentorship? That was something I struggled with a lot. I mean, my family is full of doctors, and I really had no business uncles or anybody in the family that I could turn to for business advice. And one thing I wish I had done differently was reach out to people earlier on and say, look, I seek your help or your support. I've done that now, whether it's Deepak Parekh or Harsh Mariwala, they're both mentors of mine, but I did that very late in life. And I think the last thing that's required and the most important thing is emotional support. Because at every step of the way, there are 5 people telling you why it's going to be hard for you, why it's difficult, why you shouldn't be too ambitious, why you shouldn't be too aggressive. At any point that you think of taking a step forward, there are people to remind you why you should hold back a little bit being a woman. And I think that emotional support of building that ecosystem of people that really believe in you and are constantly pushing you forward, I think is the top thing a woman entrepreneur needs.
Sairi, you're someone whose challenges, of course, have been different as an entrepreneur. In this day and age, there is a better network. There are programs. There's better funding available for entrepreneurs, be it men or women. Right. So, what are some of those programs, networks that you think aspiring women entrepreneurs can leverage?
So I think the whole startup ecosystem is now far more diverse. There are far more resources. There are accelerators. There are angels. There are forums, there are industry bodies, there are platforms like Shiro's, and there's far more access to mentorship. And I think if you just sort of got up and Googled, got up and asked, got up and tweeted, chances are you would be able to get help that you need to get your business going. I think also what happens is a lot of women start their businesses small because they're either experimenting or they're converting an idea into a more MVP before they actually start pitching it out there. And a lot of them seek support at that
Goodbye and good night.